Evir, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that has been in the headlines for years. Why is the United States so deeply interested in Venezuela? It's a question with a complex answer that goes far beyond simple headlines. It's a mix of history, money, power, and ideology. So, let's unpack it. First up, let's talk geopolitics. For over a century, the U.S. has viewed Latin America as its backyard, a concept rooted in the Monroe Doctrine. The idea is to maintain influence and stability in the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela, being a major player in South America, naturally falls under this strategic lens. A friendly government in Caracas is seen as a win for U.S. regional security. But it's not just about maintaining old influence. It's also about preventing new rivals from setting up shop. The U.S. is very concerned about the growing presence of countries like Russia, China, and Iran in Venezuela. These nations have been propping up the Venezuelan government with economic, military, and diplomatic support. From Washington's perspective, this is a direct challenge to its dominance in the region, turning Venezuela into a chessboard for global power plays. Now, let's follow the money. This is probably the reason most people think of first: oil. Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves. That's more than Saudi Arabia. Historically, the U.S. was a huge customer for Venezuelan crude. Even though sanctions and Venezuela's own production collapse have choked off that flow, the potential is still massive. American oil giants like Chevron have had long-standing interests and investments in the country's energy sector. And they'd love to see a stable environment where they can operate freely again. Beyond oil, there's the issue of debt. Venezuela owes billions of dollars to international creditors. And that includes U.S. bondholders. These investors want to get paid. And the U.S. government is interested in seeing those financial obligations met, which becomes a key factor in any discussion about Venezuela's future government and economic policies. Next, we have the powerful force of ideology. The political landscape of Venezuela changed dramatically with the late Hugo Chavez and his Bolivarian Revolution. Nicolás Maduro. This movement champions 21st century socialism and is openly anti-American. The U.S., with its long history of opposing left-wing governments in Latin America, especially those friendly with Cuba or Russia, sees this as a direct ideological threat. This opposition is often framed through the lens of promoting democracy and human rights. The U.S. government has consistently criticized the Maduro administration for what it calls authoritarian practices, rigged elections, and widespread human rights abuses. By supporting the Venezuelan opposition, the U.S. aligns its actions with its stated foreign policy goal of championing democratic values around the world, creating a powerful narrative for its involvement. The crisis in Venezuela isn't contained within its borders, which brings us to regional stability and security. The country's economic and social collapse has triggered one of the largest migration crises in modern history. Over 7 million people have fled Venezuela, pouring into neighboring countries like Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador. This massive exodus puts immense strain on the resources of these nations, creating a humanitarian disaster that threatens to destabilize the entire region. The U.S. is worried about this domino effect. Furthermore, the chaos has created a breeding ground for transnational organized crime. We're talking about drug trafficking, illegal mining, and money laundering operations that thrive in the absence of strong state control. These criminal networks don't respect borders, and their activities, particularly drug smuggling, have a direct impact on U.S. security. Another crucial piece of the puzzle is American domestic politics. It might seem strange, but what happens in Caracas can influence elections in Miami. The United States is home to a large and politically active Venezuelan expatriate community, especially in the swing state of Florida. These voters are often staunchly anti-Maduro, and their votes are up for grabs. Both Republican and Democratic politicians craft strong policies on Venezuela to appeal to this influential voting bloc. In fact, taking a hard line against the Maduro government is one of the very few issues that enjoys broad bipartisan consensus in an otherwise deeply divided Washington. This political agreement ensures that pressure on Venezuela, through things like sanctions and diplomatic isolation, remains a consistent feature of U.S. foreign policy, regardless of who is in the White House. Finally, let's tie it all back to energy security. While it's true that the U.S. is now a major oil producer itself, thanks to the shale revolution, the global oil market is a single, interconnected system. A tanker stuck in a canal on the other side of the world can make gas prices go up at your local pump. Major instability in a country with Venezuela's oil potential inevitably sends ripples through global energy markets. Sudden shocks or prolonged uncertainty can affect oil prices worldwide, which in turn impacts the U.S. economy. So, ensuring a stable and predictable energy supply from Venezuela isn't just about U.S. companies. It's about maintaining a level of stability in the global energy landscape that benefits the American economy as a whole. So, how does the U.S. exert its influence? The main tools are economic. The U.S. has imposed crippling sanctions targeting Venezuela's oil industry, its government officials, and its ability to conduct financial transactions. The goal is to starve the government of revenue and force a political change. Diplomatically, the U.S. has led efforts to isolate the Maduro regime, most famously by recognizing opposition leader Juan Guaido as the interim president back in 2019 and rallying other countries to do the same. It has also provided support, both moral and financial, to opposition figures and civil society groups inside Venezuela who are working for a democratic transition. In conclusion, as was about an issue, it's a complex web woven from strategic competition with global rivals, vast economic interests in oil and debt, a long-standing ideological battle against socialism, and pressing concerns over a migration crisis and organized crime that are spilling across the hemisphere. While the human tragedy is often the most visible part of the story, the underlying drivers are deeply embedded in the core principles of U.S. foreign policy that have shaped its relationship with Latin America for generations. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.